On today's show, it was the Reed Sheppard showcase against the Hawks as he makes a strong claim to be the Rockets' fifth starter. Josh Okogie's two-way play. JD Davison just fits. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Houston Rockets skeleton crew knocking off the Atlanta Hawks A-team in the final preseason game to go 4-0 undefeated. What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. Also the host of Locked On NBA Fridays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing, and then like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. On today's show, we're going to be talking about the Reed Sheppard showcase. 29 points in 29 minutes. He was everywhere. He was doing everything for this Rockets team in this win against the Hawks, 133-115 win. We're going to break it all down and just really, really making a claim for why he could or maybe should be the fifth starter for this Rockets team this season. We've just seen a completely different Reed Sheppard through all of preseason so far, and in particular in this game. This was a exclamation point statement game from Reed Sheppard. We'll also talk about the impact and two-way play of one Josh Okogie, who was also phenomenal in this one, as well as JD Davison's impact off the bench, how he just fits, man. He's so good. Going to talk about all of that on today's show. We'll also get into the discussion with the starting five a little bit later on in the episode. First, want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. All right. Reed was awesome in this game. Like, nothing short of just sensational. 29 points, 12 of 22 shooting, 5 of 13 from downtown. Only thing he didn't do was shoot a free throw. Just didn't manage to get to the free throw line. Even though he got knocked down on a few of his drives and probably could have made a claim to get some free throws. 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 7. Count them. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6. 7 stocks in this game. 4 steals, 3 blocks. Only a couple turnovers, was a plus 11 in his 29 minutes of run. And this is kind of what has happened with Reed when he's been given opportunity, when he's been given a starting role, and when he's played, 25, 30 minutes a night and had that big opportunity and really just let it fly. Good things have happened for him in a Rockets jersey on the court. And I know that there was a little bit, back during Summer League, we had some reservations about how he looked, given the context of Summer League, and that he didn't really, show up and look like he was the most dominant, best player on the floor in a couple of those games, which is what you want to see out of a returning player. You want to see that out of a year two guy. I think context is everything with Reed. And I do think, to a degree, similar to, Fred VanVleet and how effective he is as a player. But at the same time, like, these are guys that need, the right pieces around them at times to be able to be effective, to do the things that they're going to be able to do at a very high level on the floor. And despite the Rockets rolling out like their C-team squad here, like Reed Sheppard, and realistically, Reed Sheppard's the only like legitimate staple of the Rockets rotation who was playing in this game. You can make an argument for Josh Okogie, given, he was signed to be one of their depth pieces, right? Josh Okogie's going to be a member of like the Stay Ready crew. Although with this game, maybe he's making a claim to have a bigger role on this team this season as well. But this was basically Reed Sheppard and friends. And they toppled the Atlanta Hawks, who, granted, weren't at full strength, right? They were missing Dyson Daniels. They were missing Jalen Johnson. But Onyeka Okongwu, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, more than serviceable starter-level replacements for both of those two guys. So this was relatively Atlanta Hawks at, like, we'll call it B-plus strength. Trae Young still out there. Kristaps Porzingis still out there. Zachary Risacher, number 1 overall pick, a couple spots ahead of Reed Sheppard in this in that 2024 NBA draft. I just this is the kind of performance that gives you a ton of confidence in Reed moving forward. And I do think that with each passing game, with each practice, with each shoot around, with these opportunities, with these increased reps that Reed is getting, it's going to continue to look more and more, he's going to continue to look more and more comfortable with each passing day. And you could tell the mission statement for this game from the coaching staff to Reed was like, go out there and cook. Like, this is your chance. You don't have to worry about how you're fitting in next to KD or next to Sengun, or if you're facilitating enough to amend. Like, just go out there and do your thing. You are the number one option. Right? You are the guy that Ime probably told him, you're the guy that I want taking the most shots on the floor. And that's exactly what happened. He led the team in field goal attempts with 22, and he led the team in scoring at 29. Josh Okogie was a very close second with 28 points. Got to the free throw line 12 times. Josh was just a downhill terror in this game, as well as being gift wrapped 3 free throws on a three-point shooting foul too. But, and I'll talk about Josh and JD Davison and some other thoughts from this game. But for Reed, to me, the things that stood out were how comfortable he looked running the offense as well as hunting his own shot. The thing with Reed that has been the issue through a season and some change is at times he can appear to be too passive, right? Too unsure of himself, not, maybe looking off shots that he would otherwise normally take within the flow, like that would be considered good shots for a shooter of his caliber. Like, there's a lot of looks that Reed would give up on, or just, he'd swing the ball, one too many times, or he'd look to, how do I get somebody else involved, when instead, like, he needs to be out there taking and making a lot of these shots that he really wasn't passing up on in this game. Watching Reed just get, either rip down a rebound and take off in transition and immediately find like an opening and then pull up for a deep three, or, catching the ball on the perimeter and then waiting to see how the defense was going to react and then just letting it fly either off a DHO, or, maybe the defense sags off of him really quickly to tag like the roll man in the pick and roll set or something. Just, he played with a confidence and an aggression that I don't know that we've ever seen him play with in a Rockets jersey, quite frankly. Like, there's a case to be made that this was his singular best performance ever in a Rockets jersey. Now, it was in preseason, so you take it with a grain of salt. And he's had a handful of really impressive games, at the end of last year when the Rockets were resting some of their guys, namely the one against the OKC Thunder. That one stands out for sure. But how comfortable he looked hunting his own shot, how comfortable he looked running the pick and roll, how effective he looked finding teammates. He finished with 6 assists. I don't think the NBA does the tracking data for this yet, for potential assists and everything in the preseason. And even I did, I feel like he had at least 4 to 5 potential assists, really great feeds where he got into the teeth of the defense, kept his dribble alive, drew 2 or even 3 defenders, and then knew exactly where his outlet was going to be, whether it was a little dump off pass to Okogie or Crawford. He had a couple of those throughout the game, or, just finding that opening seam and being able to whip the pass back out to a 3-point shooter. He had a couple really great cross-court passes. He had one to Jeff Green that resulted in a 3. I think he had another one to Josh Okogie in the corner one time that turned into a 3-pointer. Just his court vision is on another level. And it's about him finding, being able to pair that court vision with the actual execution of it, right? Because he has the right idea most of the time. He sees the court incredibly well. He knows where his opportunities are for those dish outs, for those assists. And it's just about, even in a couple of the earlier preseason games, right? We would see Reed try to go for, a pass that it wasn't quite there. He was a little early or a little late on it, and there was a defender who got their hand on it, but the idea was good, right? You saw exactly what he was looking for. And when you have a point guard, a floor general with that kind of vision, it just makes life so much easier for everybody else out there to play off of him, to know that they're going to get some good opportunities. And for Reed, this was one hell of an audition to basically go out there and say, look, you want to make me your 5th starter? This is the kind of stuff that I could do. And it won't be every single night. There will still be some growing pains, but for Reed to be able to go out there and really get it done in so many different ways. He drove, he finished right at the rim. He got to his mid-range game a little bit. He wasn't shy about pulling from 3 in this game. He had a couple dunks. what did Reed not do in this game in conjunction with the defensive side of the basketball, which I know I've been harping on Reed a little bit about the defense, and I want to clarify something on that momentarily. And so we'll talk about Reed's defensive side of play in this game, the 7 stocks that he had, as well as talking about, we're going to get into Josh Okogie and JD Davison, their impact in this game as well. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. Look, the holidays are going to be here before you know it, which is exciting, but getting your home ready for guests and celebrations can feel like a lot sometimes. Maybe your serveware needs a refresh, or the guest room could use some new bedding. Wayfair has everything that you need to get your home holiday ready, from Christmas trees and wreaths to bedding, cookware, and outdoor inflatables. It's your one-stop shop for every room in and out of the house. Wayfair makes it so easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection of every style and every budget. And with free, easy delivery, even on the big stuff, you can get everything you need without the hassle of huge delivery fees. So get organized, get refreshed, and get ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's wayfair.com, wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Okay, really quickly on the Reed defense stuff. I know that I've been kind of harsh on Reed at this point defensively, and in part it's because, right, the Rockets are a team that have established such a high level, a high standard for their expectations defensively. Part of it just comes from, is Reed going to be able to fit into that defensive identity? And look, the steals, the blocks, everything was awesome in this game. He's got great defensive awareness, and he's got the gifts. He's got the quick hands, the ability to read things, to be a good, impactful defender. And he was in college, right? So that hopefully will translate. It's more so just about, there are certain, like, I guess, letdowns or breakdowns at times, right? Where right now he is on the smaller end, right? Because he's a guy that can be kind of bullied around a little bit sometimes defensively, just because of his size. And that'll change, 2-3 years from now, as Reed's been in the NBA for a few more seasons and continues to bulk up and get stronger. Like, if Fred VanVleet can get to a point where he doesn't get bullied around, at his size with his physicals, Reed can absolutely get there as well. And so some of it is that, some of it's the physical side of things, which will, that they will address themselves over time as he continues to get bigger and stronger and whatnot. But then the other side of it is just, he's so new. He's very green. And, part of what makes the Rockets defense so special is all 5 guys are so interconnected and playing at such a high level. Yes, they have some individually, like, very singularly talented defenders up and down the roster with Ime Thompson and Jabari Smith Jr. and Tari Eason and Dorian Finney-Smith, who's not available yet, but, and then Josh Okogie, and like these different pieces that make the defense special. But it's when all 5 guys are so interconnected and there is no weak link in the chain, right? And unfortunately right now, at times, Reed does appear to be a weak link defensively sometimes, right? And some of that's the little nuances of defense, right? How to read and cover, in pick and roll defense, little rotation things, little things like that. And then sometimes it's just the outright, like, isolation one-on-one. If Reed gets switched onto a bigger guy, he might get bodied. And, like, that's a little bit of a concern. And maybe I harped on it a little bit too much previously, and I'm gonna check myself, and I'll take a step back from it. He needs time to be able to grow on that end, absolutely. But by no means do I think that, like, long-term he's going to be like a net negative defender or a bad defender or any of that. He's got the IQ. He's got the awareness. He works hard on the defensive end. That's why he came up with 7 stocks in this game, right? He's got great hands, very quick to be able to read certain actions. It's just about the Rockets' overall pain tolerance and how much of those growing pains they're willing to stomach with Reed, either as the starter or playing big minutes off the bench, and learning from those moments and ironing them out as they come up. So those are my things on Reed. I do think he has the chance to be, not just a very special offensive player, but a very special player overall. That's why you see those moments where he's like, hell, he stripped Trae Young twice in this game. Oh man, the play where he stripped Trae Young and then immediately took it the other way and canned that 3-pointer, like, that was just so good. Just, there's so many great moments from Reed in this game. All right, let's switch gears here. Josh Okogie was playing out of his mind in this one as well, right? The only other, guy who has a claim to maybe be part of the Rockets' day one rotation from this group in particular, or like maybe Aaron Holiday to a lesser degree, but we'll see what that ultimately shakes out to be. But Josh Okogie in this game, 28 points, 8 of 15 shooting, 2 of 5 from downtown, 10 of 12 at the charity stripe. Had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. So not quite the 7 stocks that Reed Sheppard posted in this game, but 5 stocks. Nonetheless, very, very good. And between Reed and Josh, Trae Young was in absolute hell in this game. Only 4 makes on 14 attempts, had 4 turnovers to his 10 assists. So, he was still wheeling and dealing. He was still doing his Trae Young thing, but he was getting frustrated being checked by Okogie, being checked by Reed. Okogie at one point had a block right at the rim on Porzingis, just the length, the wingspan. And the thing that impressed me the most about Okogie in this game was just how aggressive he was, putting the ball on the floor and making things happen at the rim, getting downhill, putting pressure on the defense. And he wasn't just he's not just a chaotic, get downhill and throw your body into a defender and pray for a foul call kind of aggressive driver. He drove and he had some corkscrew little finishes, right hand side of the glass, left hand finish, inside, around the basket, some little corkscrew layups and stuff. Some really impressive finishing from Josh Okogie in this game. His ability to put the ball on the deck, get to the rim, and playing in transition was a big one. This Rockets team played so fast in this game. It was kind of a night and day difference compared to how they played the first 3 games of the preseason, because we know with Sengun and with KD, they're gonna slow things down. They're gonna play in the half court a lot. This team is not going to get out and run like crazy, like we're used to seeing them doing. But 37 fast break points for the Rockets in this game. It was an absolute track meet in this one. And they managed to force 21 Atlanta turnovers, and they scored 34 points off those 21 turnovers. And a lot of those were flat out in transition. The Rockets were just running and gunning, and guys were playing with high levels of energy. And what's unique is if the Rockets want to, they can do this with some of their other A-listers, right? You can run and gun. Think about the lineup that the Rockets had against the Jazz to close out that second quarter just before halftime, where KD sat down and Tari Eason was out there instead. And it was the 5-man young Rockets out there, Reed, Ime, Tari, Jabari, Sengun, and they started moving fast. They started playing with a much greater pace, because when you get 4 or 5 young guys all out there, right, and you don't have maybe the old heads and KD and, who are trying to maybe slow things down, play a little bit more in the half court, that kind of thing. They're playing a little bit more freely. Yes, there's bound to be some mistakes and some miscues, but at the same time, that's a weapon that this Rockets team can still absolutely lean into. And it starts with their defense. And despite not having their usual, starters and all their usual impact players, the Rockets defense looked really good in this one. All 5 guys on the floor were connected. They were communicating. They were pressuring. And maybe you chalk some of it up to the Hawks they didn't take preseason game 4 very serious. And then, but that was a good Hawks team that played close to regular season minutes. All their starters played almost 30 minutes apiece. And at no point did they wave the white flag or completely give up. And this was a game where the Rockets, they kind of had this one in the bag by the end of the third quarter, and then they just continued to blow things wide open at the top of the fourth and really turn this into an ugly blowout. So it was a really fun game overall. I still want to talk about JD Davison for a moment before we talk about the starting lineup stuff, and we're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you do not want to miss out on. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. And look, FanDuel is great because it gives you so many different ways to play. You can build out different parlays. You can try different player props. You can even follow the live betting lines during the games. But hey, maybe you're not into all that. Maybe that's, a little bit too complicated for you. That's good. You can keep things simple. Just go take a look at the outright betting favorites to win the Super Bowl this season. Right now, the Bills and Chiefs sitting in a two-way tie for first place favorite odds at plus 650. You have the Packers behind them at plus 750, the Lions plus 900, and the Eagles at plus 950. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Okay, so JD Davison, first off, my God, did he catch a body in this game? That was and look, JD Davison is not a big guy. Like he's a bigger guard, but he's all of like 6'2", maybe 6'3". Like he's not like a massive guard. I think his listed height might be 6'4", but I don't know if he's like actually a full 6'4". But gets the turnover, gets out in transition. Vit Krejci, credit to Vit Krejci for like trying to contest in transition, but he struggled. And my goodness, did JD Davison put him on an absolute poster. The Rockets bench, watching them all react to that poster, everybody gets up and like clear the bench like, whoa. It was one of my favorite plays of the game, outside of a lot of the crazy stuff that Reed Sheppard was doing. But I've just been so impressed throughout this whole preseason with how JD Davison has fit into whatever role the Rockets cast him in. He's not a one-dimensional player to where he can only play on ball or he can only play off ball, or, it almost feels like there's not really many limitations to his game. He understands where to be on the floor. He understands how and when to attack. He's really great at setting the offense himself. He's also been pretty great playing off ball when asked to play off ball to, whether it's to, Reed in this game or Ime Thompson or whoever else. Like, he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands to be effective. And the 3-point shooting, another game, 2 of 5 shooting, 40% from downtown. If that 3-point shooting is like legitimate and he's locked in the way that he's been locked in, his ability to create as an additional playmaker out there on the floor, the defense has been solid. Like, JD Davison is well on his way to earning a legitimate standard NBA contract. And the Rockets, shout out to Rafael Stone, shout out to Ime Udoka for finding him, for he's a guy that obviously has played with Ime before, or for Ime before, so Ime knew of him. Shout out to the organization for going out and getting an impact guy like this at this level, who has a legitimate chance to carve out and claim that 15th spot on the Rockets roster somewhere down the line. Given the team's lack of overall guard depth and being able to add another young, talented player to this group would be fantastic. Like, I just don't know any other way to slice it. He had 14 points, 5 of 11 shooting, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 4 steals, only a couple turnovers. Was really productive in his minutes out there on the floor. And look, there's going to be some games where you might need to rest some guys, where you need to rely on the overall depth from this team. And JD Davison has shown that he's a basketball player. Like, the dude knows how to play the game, understands where to be, understands rotations, understands how to attack and relocate offensively. Is great at sharing the basketball, is great trying to, pick and choose his spots, when to be aggressive, when to hunt for his own offense. Just a great overall feel for the game. And so I've been thoroughly impressed with JD Davison. And I apologize. I was a little asleep on JD Davison coming into Rockets preseason, coming into training camp. And my eyes have been opened to the world of possibilities for this young man and what he could be for this Rockets team somewhere down the line. So very exciting stuff coming out of him. Shout out to all the Rockets, like, two-way guys, all the fringe NBA guys participating. Isaiah Crawford getting the starting nod as the 5th starter outside of the regular standard NBA contract guys. He had 20 points, 9 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, 8 of 14 shooting. Looked right at home playing alongside the starters, 4 of 7 from downtown. And then Cam Matthews, kind of an empty stat line, no points, didn't attempt a single shot, but played hard-nosed defense, had a couple assists, had a couple steals. And then Kevon Harris, 10 points, 2 of 5 shooting, 4 of 4 at the free throw line, had 7 rebounds. Definitely felt like one of the bigger guard bodies out there between him and Cam Matthews, right? 2 guys who are distinctly guards, right? They're like 6'5"-ish, and some change. But they felt like bigger bodies out there when the Rockets were running some of these, 3 and 4 guard lineups that they had to throw out over the course of this game. So really fun game, honestly. Zero expectations with all the other guys resting and sitting out of this one, but it wound up being a super fun game overall. I want to say I wanted to look at like the lineup data from like the 3 different versions of the Rockets starting lineup that we've seen in small doses throughout this preseason. And that basically means, right, the 4 penciled in starters. So Kevin Durant, Alperen, Sengun, Ime Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr. And we've seen that quartet at various points throughout this preseason play alongside Reed Sheppard. We've seen them play alongside Tari Eason, and we've seen them play alongside Steven Adams. Those are the 3 options as it stands. And it's worth noting that Ime has continued to repeat the phrase. He talked about it post-game. In fact, this is the first time we've heard him mention it post-game, that the Rockets starting lineup could be fluid to start the season, but until everybody's truly healthy. And there's a couple different ways that you can read into that. And there's a couple different ways that you can read into the starting lineup at this point. One, Reed Sheppard didn't get rested in this game, right? And maybe that's because the Rockets needed 8 available bodies, and like Reed Sheppard's like the lowest on the totem pole. So he was like, all right, suit up, Reed. You got to play this one. So that could be a possibility, right? The Rockets needed to be able to field 8, bodies to actually play this game. But of all the players that, could have gotten arrested, right? Reed had to play this one. So maybe you look at it from that perspective, right? Maybe they could have made Clint Capela suit up for this game, and they didn't. They made Reed suit up. So that's one way to look at it and be like, well, would they make the starting point guard of the team for the season play this last game? And you could argue, well, they wanted him to get more reps in. They wanted him to have a game like this one where he could just go out and be a gunner, boost his confidence going into the regular season. There's a lot of different ways that you can read it. We can also look at the whole Tari Eason situation and Josh Okogie championing him as the 6th man. And Tari's the one guy that we haven't seen like legitimately start alongside the other 4 starters. At least not with, KD healthy and whatnot. Now we've seen him play in stints with those guys. So you take that for what it's worth. And then Steven Adams, we saw that as a version of the starting lineup. And at least as far as like the vibe check goes right now, because I don't have like the lineup data in front of me from the preseason because the NBA doesn't track the preseason lineup data. I'm kind of torn here because Reed Sheppard's the closest you're going to get to like a 1-for-1 replacement of Fred VanVleet. I get that. But I do think that, as Ime illustrated with his comments about the starting lineup being fluid, I think that's probably the right approach, because there are going to be some games where you absolutely want to lean into the double big and the throw Adams out there with Sengun and create those mismatches, because when you put Adams at the 5 and Sengun at the 4 and then Jabari at the 3 and KD at the 2, somebody has a mismatch. Oftentimes 2 people have a mismatch because they're just so much bigger than the opposing team, right? Think back to the Pelicans game where, constantly Jabari had a mismatch on Jordan Poole, and they took so much advantage of those opportunities, and Jabari popped off because of it, right? That jumbo lineup is no joke, but it's also not going to be the way to win every single game. There's going to be certain teams, certain matchups where the size isn't the answer, and maybe you don't want to start off that way. So that's maybe a game where you do look at, starting Reed Sheppard, or maybe you look at starting potentially Tari Eason if you want that extra, wing defender out there, depending on what the other team has in their starting lineup. And so this idea that the starting lineup is going to be fluid, I feel like we're still going to see Steven Adams on opening night against the Thunder, in particular because the Thunder are likely to not have J-Dub, and they're probably going to be trotting out their version of the double big with Chet Holmgren, Isaiah Hartenstein. So what better way to counter that size than to put out your own version of the double big lineup? So I think that's the direction that he's going to go opening night. Plus you get the steady veteran hand of Steven Adams out there to pair with Kevin Durant to offset some of the youth from Alp, Amin, and Jabari in that starting lineup. So I think that's going to be important. And the other angle here to consider is bringing Reed Sheppard off the bench means if Reed's going to be playing like this, if Reed's playing like this, he deserves a starting spot at some point in the season. But Reed Sheppard can be that offensive punch off the bench, right? We've kind of questioned at times, where are the Rockets going to get their offensive pop from the second unit. Tari Eason's going to have a very big responsibility as like kind of that 6-man force off the bench for the Rockets this season. And you are going to have to stagger Alperen, Sengun, and Kevin Durant to make sure there's always one of them on the floor at all times so that the offense doesn't fall off a cliff. But they're going to need productivity from their bench. And that's where you look at those two guys, Tari, Eason, Reed, Sheppard, as the two guys that can give you some of that scoring pop off the Houston bench. And I do think the last thing that I want to highlight here about the Rockets starting five, if DFS was healthy, he'd be the fifth starter right now. I feel very confident in saying that. And I feel very confident reading between the lines of what Ime Udoka is saying, and that until everyone's healthy, it'll be a fluid thing. So until everybody's healthy, some games it'll be Adams, some games it'll be Reed, some games it might even be Tari, because none of those three guys Adams is a whole different beast, provides a whole different look for the team. But, Reed has his shortcomings, Tari has his shortcomings, and I feel like DFS is just the most ideal complement for what Ime wants to achieve and for what he wants out of that fifth spot next to the other starters, right? He's the best defender between Reed, DFS, and Tari. And maybe Tari, I'm sure, would have an argument to be made here, right? There's a toss-up between those two guys. But DFS is the veteran defender. He's the more proven commodity. He's had experience at high levels defending the LeBrons and the KDs and the Hardens and the Lukas of the world, right? He's the most proven shooter of the bunch. I say proven because Reed Sheppard should be a generational shooter, but he hasn't been able to translate it consistently yet, right? So he's the most proven shooter. And he's much more than just a spot up 3-and-D guy, right? He's not afraid to put the ball on the floor. He can slash, he can drive, he can attack. He's a good connective tissue piece to have out there. And so I think the Rockets, until DFS is healthy and ready for, ready to accept the starting role and ready to be thrust into the starting lineup, it'll be that fifth starter is going to be kind of by committee. And it'll be Adams, it'll be Reed, it'll be Tari, maybe situationally. And I will stake my claim. I think opening night it's going to be Steven Adams at this point. From what we've seen through preseason, from how good the Rockets looked when they were trotting out the jumbo lineup, and also being able to kind of divvy up your ball handling responsibilities between Ime, between Reed, especially with how much it feels like this team is going to try to play through Alperen and Sengun this season. Why waste Reed's minutes out there on the floor if all he's going to do is spot up at the 3-point line? When you could have him, at times running the show, running the offense when Sengun isn't out there, right? I'm really looking forward to the minutes where Reed can share the floor with Kevin Durant, actually. I think those are going to be some really fun minutes where those two guys should be able to play off of each other really well. And I mean, could you imagine Reed doing some of the things that he was doing in this game against Atlanta, but having KD as one of his release valves out there? Like, we just need to see that level of continued confidence and aggression from Reed, and good things will happen. That's all I've got for this final preseason game. We will have another episode coming out where we're going to talk about some of the starting five stuff going on with Netflix and KD and our old good friend James Harden showing up in that starting five documentary on Netflix. So be on the lookout for that next episode, as well as talking about Tari Eason's contract situation. So that's one you definitely won't want to miss out on. So we'll tackle that in our next show. So be on the lookout for that in your podcast feeds as well as the YouTube channel. But as always, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.